All right, so here we go. So apparently IGN dropped a video and they said Resident Evil game is the game that can't be remade, saying that it needs to be rewritten due to the fact that you're killing Africans and things of that nature. The game has been in Spain, the game has been in all other parts of Europe, and you've killed different types of zombies. So why not Africa? So I figured as a black man, as you can see, I figured I'd respond to this and see what they're talking about. And this is a raw opinion. I'm not like, I don't have any sponsors or nothing like that I have to abide to. So you're probably going to get one of the rawest opinions you're going to get on this topic. So let's get into it.
Resident Evil 4's release last year, Capcom's project to remake the glory years of its survival horror series is complete. But as the game's post-credit scene suggests, the remakes aren't over. And so the big question is, where next? The obvious answer is a remake of Resident Evil 5. But on the game's 15th anniversary, it's clear that moving forward chronologically will take Capcom's remakes into the series' weakest era, an era of gameplay and narrative decisions best left in the past. Resident Evil 5 simply can't be remade. At least not to the standards of Capcom's best work. And so the answer is not to remake, but to rewrite.
They don't gotta rewrite shit. Well, I mean, as far as the zombies being black, they don't gotta rewrite the shit.
Resident Evil is a survival horror series. Not that you'd know that playing Resident Evil 5. Sure, it features a constant flow of horrific imagery, but Resident Evil 5 is an action game through and through. That's evident in its cover shooter mechanics, vehicle chases with on-rails turret sequences, and the constant rattle of assault rifles. Even its visual design evokes the sandy shades of modern military games that experienced mass popularity in the late 2000s. It all speaks to a series that had lost its way. Rather than reflect on the tenets that were the foundation of its experience, Resident Evil 5 looked to the contemporary gaming zeitgeist in an attempt to find a new lease of life. The result is an unholy hybrid of Resident Evil, Gears of War, and Call of Duty. It's as ugly and unwieldy as it sounds.
He just sounds like a hater.
This design appears to not just be a misguided...
I know like the Resident Evil purists like didn't really like the game, but it still was well received as for the most part, and I feel like it became kind of like, you know, like a cult classic. Like, I think the only thing that held the game back was the AI. The AI was so ridiculous. Like, there's been the mod community has modded Sheva, made the AI better, and people have actually said it's been a better game since those mods came out. So if they could just fix that, that's really all they have to do is fix Sheva. You can make the same type of game and just fix Sheva. That's all. But let's see what he got to say.
Attempt to follow Western successes, but also a misreading of its predecessor. With Resident Evil 4, director Shinji Mikami deftly reinvented the series through the use of a new over-the-shoulder camera angle. The perspective allowed for a more kinetic, action-heavy game. Despite this, Mikami never lost sight of the terror at the core of Resident Evil. Through the use of enemies that were strategically placed to provide undulating waves of tension and fear, and the inclusion of Ashley as your vulnerable charge, combat encounters were focused on surviving overwhelming horrors rather than dominating foes. Resident Evil 5, meanwhile, presents its enemies as waves to be gunned down with increasingly powerful weaponry. Their purpose is cannon fodder, a wall of meat to slow your progress through levels. And those levels are not locations to be explored. Instead, they are largely funnels that push you from entrance to exit. Resident Evil 4 may have replaced the series' traditional continuous structure with discrete levels in an attempt to move away from the backtracking-heavy design of previous games, but it preserved the spirit of locations like the Raccoon City Police Station. The village, Salazar's castle, and the island feature interlocking, explorable pathways that solidify these locations as authentic spaces rather than obstacle courses. Resident Evil 5 has no interest in this, with the majority of its stages being little more than corridors peppered with dead ends to hide treasures in. Their lack of authenticity means no one will ever mention the Kijuju Autonomous Zone in the same breath as the Spencer Mansion.
I ain't gonna lie, he glazing.
All this is to say that a faithful remake of Resident Evil 5 would break Capcom's 7-year streak of brilliant survival horror games. It's telling that the series' reset point, Resident Evil 7, was a reinvention of the very first game, a haunted house that grew ever larger as you unlocked new rooms by solving its puzzles. Clever reinventions of this base conceit is the key to Resident Evil's success, be that dropping an unstoppable force into the house's corridors, such as Resident Evil 2's Mr. X, or expanding the scope of the house. Resident Evil Village village's titular location is effectively a giant manor.
Village
Its
was
corridors
dope.
are streets, and its rooms are houses. Resident Evil 5's stage-driven structure is simply inferior to this design. A modern recreation of it would only further highlight its flaws, especially coming in such close proximity to masterclasses like the remake of Resident Evil 2.
I still stand by, if they fix Sheva and they modernize the controls and modernize the graphics, this game will be fine. It's probably going to get the same criticism it had before, but then years later, somebody's going to you're going to start seeing the think pieces in the video essays talking about, actually, Resident Evil 5 Remake was really good. Because that's what happened with this game. So that's probably what's going to happen with this one.
Remakes can, of course, completely redefine the structure of their source material. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, for example, is recognisably an updated version of the classic RPG, but
Indeed.
its world design and gameplay mechanics are a world apart from the 1997 original. And so you could argue that Resident Evil 5 is actually the Resident Evil most in need of a remake. A whole new environmental structure and scenario design that reins in the action and dials up the horror would bring it in line with Capcom's other remakes. But all of this doesn't account for Resident Evil 5's most notorious problem. Racism.
Oh boy, here we go. Here we go. He said racism. Holy shit. As if...
Set in a fictional West African country, Resident Evil 5's primary antagonists are black people. Yes, it's technically the Ouroboros virus that protagonist Chris Redfield is fighting, but the parasite's host is depicted as a nation of mobs and primitives who are violent even before their infection. Intentionally or not, Resident Evil 5 positions Africa as the Dark Continent, an uncivilized world harboring a diseased population that needs gunning down via Western intervention in the name of global security. This insensitive treatment of people of colour was hotly debated even as early as Resident Evil 5's debut trailer, with writers such as Ngai Kroll and Stephen Totillo pointing out the game's uncomfortable post-colonial imagery. The arguments and think pieces continued well into the game's release window, with IGN's own former editor-in-chief Hilary Goldstein having also wrestled with the subject. But that was 2009, a time when race was apparently a debate rather than a reality. In the 2020s,
Bro, like... Okay, I understand that even back then there was a little bit of a shake-up and there was a little bit of a issue with them being slaves, but like, okay, you mentioned Ngai Kroll. I got a lot of respect for him. I respect that brother, but largely the people that actually bought the game and played the game, we did not give a flying fuck, bro. It's Africa. There's mad black people there. Like, come on, bro. Like that's the motherland. That's where we're from. So if you had Africa, but you had a bunch of white zombies, and there are white zombies in the game, then that would be largely inaccurate. And if you're going, where would be the first place where an outbreak would happen? If you did have a real outbreak out there, it would be in the poorest parts. It would probably be worse in the poorest parts, which they go. They're in these shanties and whatnot and things of that nature. And like he even said himself, the goal was the Ouroboros. He's fighting against the Ouroboros disease. And he said that the Africans were aggressive even before being effective. So the fuck what? Like, I don't understand, bro. And sometimes I can get on my social justice warrior shit, so don't think I'm just like some coon who just hates my own kind. I love being black. I love my people. I wish we could do better in a lot of cases, but that's another video. But like, come on, bro. Like, I don't think it was blatant racism on Capcom's part. Like, if anything, they were trying to go for an accurate depiction. Nobody said nothing when a bunch of Spanish people was getting killed in Resident Evil, or a bunch of white people was getting killed in, Raccoon City. You said they painted Africa as the dark continent. Like, so what was Raccoon City? The dark city? That city wasn't painted well in a good light and well respected. They had the Los Plagas disease, those little shanty towns with all those people. That wasn't depicted in the best light either. So why are we all of a sudden running towards this racist shit? Like, I don't understand, man. I don't understand. We gotta tighten up. Black people, we gotta tighten up, and other races, y'all gotta stop being offended for us, bro. Like, if you want to be an ally, that's cool, but you gotta stop being offended for us. Like, dead ass. Like, it's getting old. Like, you're not really helping the way y'all trying to go about this shit.
In a post-Black Lives Matter world, there is only one acceptable response to a white man shooting waves of Africans for an entire video game. No.
There is one thing I do.
It's a fucking video game, bro.
I have a job to do, and I'm gonna see it through.
Remakes may be able to redefine their source material, but there's only so many changes you can make until it's not a remake at all, but an entirely new game. And if you take Africa out of Resident Evil 5, is it Resident Evil 5 anymore?
It's
Even
not.
with a vastly improved, more sensitive take on the continent, perhaps one with a black protagonist and a more empathetic look at the outbreak, the experience would simply...
Chevel was a protagonist. She was with see, y'all making me. She was with Chris the entire game, bro. And she had mad dialogue, and she was very important. I would argue that without Sheva, Chris probably would have got packed up without Sheva. Like, what do you mean? She was a protagonist, and you could control her with the multiplayer. Like, what the fuck is he talking about?
be too divorced from the original to hold the name Resident Evil 5. So where does Capcom go now? Personally, I'd look backwards. Code Veronica is an ideal candidate, as is the original Resident Evil, but if the only way is chronologically forward, then a total rewrite of what comes next is the logical path. Because what followed Resident Evil 4 was not one terrible game, but two. Resident Evil 6 doubled down
Resident Evil 6
down on the action-packed, set-piece heavy shooter design, to the extent that much of it could be mistaken for a third-person Call of Duty spin-off were it not for the monsters. Its restrictive level design practically puts you in a chokehold, forcing you to endure a barrage of bombastic moments that have no interest in evoking any sense of fear. Resident Evil 6 is a survival horror, only in that it's a horrible game that you have to survive playing. But this time around, it doesn't have to be like that. Capcom now has the opportunity to ignore the past and completely reinvent this chunk of the timeline. In Resident Evil 4 Remake's post-credit scene, evil mastermind Albert Wesker details his plans for world domination to Ada Wong. Reflected in his glasses is an image of Excella Gione and the Stairway of the Sun, two significant plot elements from Resident Evil 5, which indicates Capcom's intentions. But there's more to consider. This scene is largely a replication of the sequence from Assignment Ada, a non-canon chapter from the original Resident Evil 4. Its shift from unofficial to canon points to a willingness to change. Furthermore, the end of this scene is completely rewritten. When learning of Wesker's plans, rather than dutifully deliver the stolen Las Plagas sample to him, Ada betrays her shadowy boss and forces her helicopter to turn around. In this moment, the future of Resident Evil becomes unclear. Capcom has given itself the freedom to do whatever it wants. I just hope it's not a remake of Resident Evil 5.
And I hope that it is, and it will be.
Series, check out our video on the biggest changes in Resident Evil 4 Remake. And for everything else, stick with IGN.
Yeah, they getting, yeah, I can understand why he was getting cooked for this. Look, IGN, Resident Evil 5, racist. Look, IGN getting cooked. IGN getting cooked. Actors on Resident Evil 5. Resident Evil 5 isn't racist. IGN got what they deserve. They getting cooked for this take, bro. Like, come on, man. Y'all didn't make this video when the Las Plagas was getting attacked. Y'all didn't make this video when white people was getting attacked. Like, I reacted to a lot of IGN videos. Obviously, my channel has a lot of reactions to IGN videos because it's like a good starting point for me. It's a good starting point for how to look at a game before it comes out. But I really look at their think piece videos. But this one was bad, man. Like, you trying to cape for black people. We don't need you to cape for us, bro. Mad black people enjoyed it. Like, me and my friends, we had that game. Latino people enjoyed it. White people enjoyed it. And not many people, I feel like not, like it was a loud minority that was upset about the black slaves and the white man running around killing black slaves. I mean black slaves, I'm bugging. Black zombies or whatever, but nah, man, nah. And like, I just never felt that way, and I just didn't know anybody in real life that actually played the game that felt that way, and even online as well. Again, Ngai Crow, I respect that brother. Legend in the game. Great at what he does. I humbly disagree. And while I know it wasn't as critically received, like, let's look at the Metacritic scores for Resident Evil 5. Let's look at the Metacritic scores. Metacritic. Some people take this with a grain of salt, but I mean, it's an aggregator. It's an aggregator. So let's see. So overall, as of today, it was released March 13th, 2009. As of right now, it has an 83. 83 rating. That's favorable. That's favorable. It was overall, like I said, at first it was critically received. It was people bashing it. I think, didn't IGN give the game a 10 out of 10? Did they not give the game a 10 out of 10 despite this? Despite the people complaining about the racism? Like, didn't hold on. Resident Evil 5 IGN. Didn't they give this game a 10 out of 10? They gave it a 9.3. So what are you talking about? Like, what are you talking about? And those people still complaining about it. So it was generally a well-received game. Like I said, you know, at first it was a little, I don't know about that. But then you play it and you realize that it's in Africa, bro. If there was an outbreak of disease, it would affect the poorest areas first. So that's where you would have to go. Like, let's stop pretending like we don't know that. Like, come on, bro. Like, let's be real. Let's be real about it. I don't know, man. It was just a bad take. He getting cooked. IGN getting cooked for that. And I feel like if there's any like extreme leftist stuff, like, that would be it. I'm not a political person, but I would consider this like extreme leftist stuff. Like, why is a guy from this guy? He's from the UK. He's British or something like that. Why was he a white man from the UK mad about a video game that probably most black people probably wouldn't even mad about? Like, most people that played the game, that are gamers that played the game, don't care. Didn't care. Like, if you're in Africa, it's expected that you're gonna kill black infected people because they're infected by the Ouroboros disease, and them being aggressive beforehand. I don't even care. I wouldn't even care about that either, because it's just like, if you some foreign man and you run up in my home, run up in my village, I would be aggressive too. Shit, if I see some big buff white dude with tactical gear on and then he's flanked by a woman that look like my cousin or something like that, when they pulling up guns drawn or asking questions and shit, I will be aggressive too. Shit, you shitting me? You don't see that every day around there. So yeah, I'm done with my little rant. Y'all let me know what y'all think down in the comments. Right, this video went way too long at this point. I'm probably edit it down a little bit, but yeah, let me know what y'all think. All right, so y'all already know the vibes. So like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. It's your boy JusticeXFalls, and we out. One.